Young men have swung heavily towards Donald Trump with this past election, and it's raised questions about a major generational shift to the right, and it's sparked debate over the influence of media, job prospects, and education gaps. Because while people have been looking through the data, talking about all the different demos, I want to focus on young men and their turnout for Trump. With NBC News exit polls finding that men 18 to 29 went 49% for Trump and 47% for Kamala Harris, with that gap being way more pronounced in swing states. Right, CBS News found that men under 30 in Pennsylvania, they voted for Trump 56% to 38%. And ABC News finding that in Michigan, Trump had a 20-point lead with young men. And understand, this is a major gender gap nationwide because Harris got 61% of the vote for women in 18 to 29. And while yes, young people in general went to Harris, the Democrats' hold on young voters, it's shrinking. With, for example, CNN finding that the advantage went from 24 points for Biden back in 2020 to just 11 points for Harris. And Axios noting there that this shift, especially considering the turnout from young men, quote, signals that the MAGA movement with the support of a great deal of America's youngest voters has lasting power. And the thing is, right, this shouldn't be a complete shock. There's been coverage of the political gender gap heading into the election. Right? I mean, back in August, the New York Times ran an article titled, "Many Gen Z Men Feel Left Behind. Some See Trump as an Answer." And that is 100% something that Trump's campaign was actively trying to tap into, especially in terms of young men's media consumption. You had Trump just bouncing from podcast to podcast of these big male influencers. And hell, even early in the morning when Donald Trump had won the election, Dana White credited these people.
I want to thank the NELK boys, Aiden Ross, Theo Vaughn, Bustin' with the Boys, and last but not least, the mighty and powerful Joe Rogan.
Because not only did Trump sit down with these influencers, many of them used their platforms to advocate for it. The NELK boys posting frequently about Trump online and condemning Harris, even going on to Fox News to discuss their support. Then of course, Joe Rogan was easily one of the biggest podcast appearances, and that ultimately ended in a Trump endorsement. Though this also is some argued that he didn't even need to appear on the podcast to court the votes, that the popularity of those creators alone was indicative of where young men's politics lean. And all of that as you've had some influencers ringing the alarms about it for a minute now. For example, this clip of Hasan Piker on Crooked Media's Offline podcast that was filmed earlier this year, now gaining some traction.
If you're a dude under the age of 30 and you have any hobbies whatsoever, whether it's playing video games, whether it's working out, whether it's, I don't know, listening to like a history podcast or whatever, every single facet of that is just completely dominated by center right to like definitely center right to Trumpian right, like openly Trump right, not like genuinely neo-Nazi. That part is quieted down a little bit, but like they're like 90% of the way there. It creates a lot of vulnerable men who are looking for answers. And I think a lot of right-wing podcasters and the manosphere and the like take advantage of that. And they do a very good job of taking advantage of it. They're like, oh yeah, you're angry. You're angry because trans people exist. You're angry because women are taking your jobs. Like they should be going back to a traditional lifestyle.
And then of course, as people have been discussing the, the so-called manosphere trend or like kind of this world, a lot of people have then been pointing their fingers at the popularity of Andrew Tate, who is a self-described misogynist. Where he's notably celebrated Trump's win by saying he wants to move back to the US and even posting a photo of him as Trump's press secretary. Also cracking jokes about the win, saying things like, "I saw a woman crossing the road today, but I just kept my foot down. Right of way, you no longer have rights." And so now you have people arguing, if the Democrats want to win, they need a liberal Andrew Tate. And I will say, and I'll expand on this in a moment, yes, I think it is true that Democrats probably need to rethink their media strategies, especially as it pertains to the youth vote. But I think all of this, it could also be an oversimplification. With, for example, the likes of Bloomberg showing charts about why young men likely voted how they did, noting that after years of stagnation, median weekly real wages for men aged 21 to 35 rose steadily during Trump's first tenure as president. Also, they're noting that many men entered the workforce under Trump, though there was notably a big pandemic drop, and many did enter again later under Biden. But the association of those original jobs, it was there nonetheless. And this is Bloomberg noted that many men are falling behind in education. And if you look at how demographics vote, the no college degree crowd was much more likely to vote right. So you have places like Bloomberg noting that all this made Trump's rhetoric appealing to young men. But then they also argued that Trump may have made young men feel heard during the campaign, and they did experience some genuine improvements during his administration. But then adding the shifts in the job market are real, and it's not clear Trump's policies will help young men adapt. And so with all of this, there are a number of things at play. If you are someone in this demographic that voted for Trump, I would love to hear your thoughts on why you did it, why you didn't do it. And it can be a specific thing or a general thing. But what I will say is, I don't know if the left needs a liberal Andrew Tate, but I do think that the left needs to get better about going to the public square. What I mean by that is if you look from independent to right-wing influencers, they have been embraced by the right-wing political machine. You have right-wing politicians that have podcasts. They also go on other people's podcasts. They also embrace podcasters. Right? They open the doors and fully embrace the likes of Charlie Kirk lifted him up. And there's a whole range of these folks. Whereas you see that a lot less from the left. Granted, you do have outliers. You have Bernie Sanders. I mean, it was a big deal when he went on Rogan back in 2019. And I mean, he's also a great example. He hopped on Theo Vaughn after Trump. AOC is also very skilled in the space. And, in the lead up to the election, the Harris Walls campaign did some things here and there. But I mean, to give you an anecdotal example, when I went to cover the DNC, there was like this whole official way to try and get access to certain politicians. We got one of the probably, I don't even know how many people we requested. But then separately, even though they told us not to do it, we started reaching out to campaigns, and we got Governor Josh Shapiro. He seemingly understood the value of talking to people in our space. We had to film the thing in some like echoey back room, but he took the time. Whereas with, I guess, likely soon to be former Senator Bob Casey, my team worked to get that interview. We had something set up, and then they just bailed on us. And it genuinely felt like they thought Casey was the get and not the other way around. That he was being given access to an audience of 18 to 35-year-old voters. Right? And understand, I'm not tooting my own horn. I'm not saying I'm like some crazy big deal, but I'm saying that there seems to be a disconnect for a number of politicians, and I think it feels like more so on the left that they don't understand the value proposition. You go to where the people are. But yeah, like I said, I'd really love to know your thoughts on this whole story and situation. Hey, thanks for watching, and I hope you enjoyed this clip from the full Philip DeFranco show. And also, a big thanks to Squarespace for sponsoring our Clips channel. Turn your passion into profit over at squarespace.com/filler. Use the QR code. Because whether you're launching a business or a lucrative side hustle, your website is your digital business card. It's the only space where you control the story, no algorithms or distractions. And with Squarespace, it's so easy because they got a ton of stunning professional templates with drag and drop editing that makes site design incredibly simple. No coding required. So get started for free at squarespace.com/Phil or scan the QR code on screen and use code Phil for 10% off when ready to launch. Squarespace.com/Phil.